Hey there, YouTubers. So, since the last video, which was mostly about Codesters, and so is this one, in case you're wondering, I'm basically deciding that this way of reading a sprite is never going to give me much detail. I did go to more resolution. I'll get this running. Actually, when I leave this screen and go off and click in another tab, I believe that operations are suspended. In other words, the JavaScript that's actually running can detect when my focus goes to another tab and it basically just stops. So it just passed the tip. And here, let's see what happens. So I just went to Mercado on my bicycle and met with some of the local people. I could tell you about each one of these people and what their role is. Here's some really cool art that's on display at El Mercado. And I've taken pictures like this before. I don't mind taking similar pictures more than once, the way I do photography. There's the photographer. There's a lot of glare there, so it's hard to read everything. But I encourage people to visit El Mercado if you're in Portland. There's Jenny playing the piano, Zach listening. Go to Zach's Hot Dog Shack on Hawthorne. It's near Bar of the Gods in what we call Barvana, or is that what we call it? Anyway, eastern Hawthorne, as you're approaching Mount Tabor, has its own charms, as distinct from even the Pauling House area, which is what I show you most. Okay, so there was a bunch of pictures. I'll leave Jenny and the piano and beautiful singing and see if the Codesters has done anything. Not really. In other words, that whole time we were looking at slides, it suspended operation. Now, what I've done in this version is probably what you thought of doing and maybe already done based on the last video. At least mentally, you thought, well, let's just make smaller sensors, right? The sensors are these hexagons that are marching across left to right. And the theory is each time we create one, it's either colliding or not with the big blue thing, the big blue sprite, which is also a hexagon. And if it detects a collision, it's supposed to mess with the database. And by database, I just mean in this case a Python dictionary with tuples for keys. Tuples being pairs of numbers, i.e. the actual x and y coordinates of each one of these stamps as far as I'm concerned. So think of like negative 100, 100 as a memory address, but also as a location. And think of a third piece of information, either white or green, depending on whether there was a collision detected in that place or not, right? So again, think of a tractor. You could think of a crop circle, I suppose. It's like the tractor will do something different. Well, usually we don't think of tractors as creating crop circles, but I have exercises where that's exactly what happens. In other words, the tractors are designed to make fancy patterns in the fields. We're not leaving it to whatever's doing the crop circles. We want to do them with the tractors. Okay, so now it's starting over, right? So that was our UFO, so-called, a blue hexagon. And how good a job did our database do in detecting that thing? And we now have a dictionary to read back from. So having scanned it, we're now going to read back from the dictionary where every coordinate pair supposedly has a report, basically, or a result, either an X, which means, hey, there was something there, or it didn't see anything there, in which case it's still white. So you see how it's starting to fill in here, and it's sporadic, right? It's kind of rectangular in broad outline, but it's certainly sporadic, we could say, sparse. Lots of mix of white and green. So it's only detecting some collisions, or there's some leak of data. Somehow it's not getting into the database properly. And the logic is such that I think what's happening is that we advance more stamps faster than the collision detector can really keep up. So it kind of hears about these collisions and reports on some of them, but I think a lot of them are falling through the cracks. In any case, what we're going to get is not a hexagon, but a big rectangle, more or less. And I think that constitutes the bounding box for the sprite. In other words, it's not the bounding box for a sprite is not the exact shape of the sprite, right? That's my current hypothesis. So I've learned something. I'm not really thinking this is the way to do sprite television, like transmit this database to someone else and have them recreate the sprite on their end in detail. I don't think so. Not this current method. So I'm back to slides again. This is getting kind of global matrix. Glenn has found an old National Geographic game, which he's kind of doing some art with. He's kind of mixing it up with that. I finally rotated these. These are from the Oregon State Legislature. We are interested in being on the winning team, you might say. Like, we want future Oregonians to be proud of where we stood, right? California is with us on this one. So anyway, just a few global matrix slides, a few Mercado slides, and resuming with Codesters. I think we understand much has been learned. I'll give it another shot in another video. By the way, you can find me on Quora. I'll put a link in the YouTube here, but I answer a bunch of questions. I stick to pretty much the same topics as I do in my YouTubes to some degree, so you'll see rather familiar opinions perhaps. I sort of stick to a certain turf, you might say, but every so often I jump out of my little narrow area and comment on world events or whatever. So there's some interesting stuff. You might find there's a Bernie Sanders. Check it out. I'll just let you know that exists. And also I recommend NASA's close-ups of the sun, some post-production processing to make everything visible to our eyes, but wow, what an amazing ecosystem there. Solar physics, right? If I went to Asylum City in the School of Tomorrow, could I study solar physics just because I want to, right? Is it going to make anyone any money? Well, maybe, who knows? But it's a research grant from the sun to study the sun. You could say that. All right, talk to you soon. School of Tomorrow.